December 5th, 2019. Joe here at Simple Life Show. Appreciate everybody for joining me today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, do all that good social media stuff. I appreciate everyone that does that. It really helps to get as much opinions out there, unbiased opinions out there on social media, because that is really important to fight against the war machine that is the mass media out there that is trying to shove all kinds of propaganda down your throat from both sides. From Fox News, from CNN. I am throwing everybody under the bus because they're all guilty of it. So we really just kind of want to get into, really the truth of the matter. We're talking about Pete Buttigieg right now. We all know him. We all love him. He's actually leading in the polls right now in Iowa, according to several polls out there. But he has just recently writ Republicans a new one. And of course, surprise or surprise, it's really all about racism once again. And I think the only real reason that Buttigieg is really doing this and why he is kind of doing the whole basket of deplorable things that Clinton was, that was one of her worst moves that she could have possibly done. I think that cost her the election when she came out with the basket of deplorables. I think that was one of the big nukes that she let off in her own campaign, but we'll digress. A lot of Democrats are really, and it just seems like every single year they're trying to pander to minorities, and I mean, this is going to be. I am part white. I'm a Native American. I'm a white person as well. I have a lot of different genetics, but you know what? I don't really care about that, and neither should you. I don't care what color you are, as long as you have the right, or if you're a rational human being and you love this country and you believe in the Constitution, then you're okay by me. I really don't care. I'm, and when people say that, I really don't even like talking about racism and race, because it has nothing to do with what is right and what is an individual. I look at everyone on an individual basis. And I can tell within 10 minutes of talking to you if you're a good person or if you're just a moron. And that's just the way I operate. I think that's the way most rational people do operate. However, Pete Buttigieg thinks differently. He has kind of thrown Trump supporters under the bus again. I think he's getting a little desperate for black support out there, and it's starting to show. So he has kind of thrown them under the bus here. We are going to go through a few clips of him talking.
Anyone who supported this president is, at best, looking the other way on racism, at best. Anyone who supported the president is, at best.
So that was a little 7-second clip of Buttigieg saying that anyone who supports the president, at best, is looking the other way on racism. I'm not exactly sure what that means. I don't know what polls he's looking at. I don't know who he's really talked to. I know that he's surrounded there in South Carolina, the majority during that campaign stop by people of color or minorities and stuff like that. And I understand why he is really doing that. That makes a lot of sense for a campaign to try to convince the minorities that you're on their sides. But I think that's really not the best way of going about it. I think that when you do this type of thing, then you are, number one, that you are really turning off Trump supporters. You're basically saying, Trump supporters, you are racist. Come vote for me. That's not going to happen. Buttigieg is not going to get any Trump supporters to climb back over the fence and go for him. He is doing the same mistake that Clinton did in her campaign by basically throwing everyone under the bus that supports Trump. This is not the way to go in a republic. This is not the way to go when you're trying to win people over. We have some other clips here of Buttigieg making other comments.
Do you think that people who support President Trump and his immigration policies are racist?
Anyone who supports this is supporting racism. Este es racismo y es sencillo.
Okay, so that was Buttigieg during one of the Democratic debates. Basically, of course, he has to use Spanish there to make sure that all the Spanish people know how racist Trump supporters are, so they'll simply go vote for him. Okay, this isn't really something about race and stuff like that. Yeah, I am not a black person. I am not an Hispanic person. I can't really speak too much on racism because I don't personally experience it and I'm in another group. Okay, this isn't really something about that. This is all the divisive tactics that happen when a society is destroying itself from the inside. You have class warfare, you have race warfare, you have all this thing. This is all of the communist type of ideologies that's being influenced. You have to turn the population on itself. You have to turn the population against each other, so they're constantly fighting with each other. This is how communism, this is how socialism takes over. So we have to protect all these protected classes of people because of all these make-believe boogeymen that are out there that may have been there in the past, absolutely, but it's nowhere close to the way it used to be. Okay, that's just history, and I cannot speak to every other person's type of what they go through on a daily basis, and I'm sure that they there's plenty of people out there that do go through these types of things, but we have to keep focused on what is really at stake here. We have to really focus on the separations of two different ideologies. We can't get all caught up in this racism type of this racism type of talk and the speech that keeps going on, where it completely divides people. This is how Democrats win. This is how communism and socialism wins, because it shuts people up. I really didn't even really want to talk about this, but when Pete Buttigieg wants to start throwing people on a bus and saying, "Well, everyone's a racist that supports Trump," that is complete BS, and he knows it is, but he has to say these types of things. Pete Buttigieg, even on his website, he has what's called this Douglas plan, which I think it's kind of offensive, but you're more than welcome to go and read this. This whole thing, I read the majority, probably 75% of this. It just kind of goes over, how people of, color, minorities, however you want to term it, whatever is the least offensive thing to say, are going through the systemic racism that this country has been part of. Now, I am not going to say that there hasn't been systemic racism in this country. I know there has. To say there hasn't is being completely inept and stupid and completely ignorant of history. However, we have grown as a nation, and we've become a very, very giving nation and very inclusive nation. If you now nowhere in this Douglas plan, this is just kind of droning on and on about how terrible everything is for people of minorities. And I'm not saying it's not bad. I am not saying that it's not true that these things are happening. However, the systemic racism that happened in the past does not exist exactly in that framework today. There is so much wealth and opportunity for people all over the United States. And yes, is it equal for everybody? Absolutely not. We discussed that. In a capitalist society, not everyone will be equal. You are judged based on your individuality. At least ideally, that's the way it should be. Now, this crony capitalism that we're currently living under, that Trump is trying to get rid of, that's what he ran on. That is something that has to be dealt with, absolutely. But if when I have a conversation with someone about this specific topic, I'm like, okay, show me the specific thing that happened. Show me the specific law that happened. Show me something of some sort of substance that I can sink my teeth into, because just simply speaking in platitudes as if everyone of a specific group is just racist, and they just simply can't help it because they're white or whatever. I'm just not really buying into that. I can't buy into it because it's illogical. It's irrational to think that every single person thinks a certain specific way just because they happen to have a certain skin color. I can't attribute that to the white population just as much as I can't attribute that to any other person of any color. And when we really start to look at it, there's some specific questions that can really debunk this whole thing. I found this really interesting article from the National Review. It was from July 30th, 2019. How to tell if a Trump supporter is racist, right? So that's really what's going on. That's what Buttigieg is really talking about here in South Carolina. While he's trying to get the black vote, he was trying to convince everyone that Trump supporters are racist. Well, that's nothing new. They have been screaming this for a long time, that if you support Trump, or if you're Republican, conservative, whatever you want to call yourself, you're going to be an inherent racist, especially if you're white. Then you have to, then if you're a racist, then that's just something that you have to deal with. I do not buy that. But how can you tell if a Trump supporter is racist? There's three different questions that this person posed, and I think they're pretty brilliant. And I think that when you actually hear these questions, a lot of this is really going to make sense. And I'll tell you why. The three questions are the following. The first, do you have more in common with, or are you more personally more comfortable in the company of a white leftist or a black conservative? The second question, would you rather have 9 white leftists or 9 black conservatives on the U.S. Supreme Court? The third question, would you rather have your child marry a black conservative Christian or a white non-Christian liberal? I think that if you really think about those questions, it's going to become very, very obvious, and it's going to be clear what is really at play here. And it's not anything to do with race. It's ideologies. There is a divide between different ideologies. And if you go look at what the leftists are doing with their communist ideologies that they are trying to interject into this country, they are trying to make it seem that if you side with Trump, or if you're a conservative, then you are therefore a racist. And that is the most illogical thing that I've ever heard, because it's not about race. It's about ideologies. But we live in this society now where we're too afraid to speak out and try to not so much simplify this argument, but identify that it doesn't have anything to do with race. It has to do with the differences in ideologies. Conservatives are different. I would answer these questions in the affirmative. I would rather be around black conservatives than I would white leftists. I would rather be around, would rather have 9 black conservatives in the U.S. Supreme Court than 9 white leftists. I would rather my child marry a black Christian conservative than a white non-Christian liberal. It has nothing to do with me hating white people or loving black people, or the reverse. It has nothing to do with race. It has to do with ideologies and individualism. It's how that person is as an individual. Does that person conform with me on how I view this country, and how I view freedom, and how I view the way this republic is supposed to be run based on the founding fathers? Yes, the founding fathers were not perfect. There was slavery at the time. We no longer have slavery. Guess what? In other countries, they still do. We were the only country that's fought a war over slavery. Can we just let that go right now? We really need to focus on the ideologies that's at play, and the black supporters for Trump understand this. They understand that. That's why they keep saying that they're leaving the plantation, because it's not a literal plantation. It's a slavery of thought. It's a slavery of an ideology that's constraining to individualism. And that's what it all boils down to, people. That's really what it's all about. And they don't want to come out, and the Democrats and the leftists don't want to come out and say this is a war of ideologies, because that would just be too easy. It is too easy to defeat that ideology. They have to hide that ideology behind racism. They have to hide it behind feminism. They have to hide it behind all these things that it's hard for like cisgender white males to talk about. We can't really talk about that because you'll be instantly shut down, as well you should, because you really don't have a place to talk about that sort of thing. It's just, like straight white men talking about abortion. Well, it's really easy to shut that down. It's like, well, you're not a female. You can't talk about that sort of thing. But when we start talking about, when we get rid of all that other stuff, and we start talking about simple, rational ideologies on human beings moving forward in a free society, then the Democrats lose every single time. And that's all I got to say about that. It's just a war of ideologies. And that's what you really have to focus on going forward. If you're in a conversation with a liberal or something, or leftist, next time you're in a conversation with them, ask them those questions, and then you'll understand, or ask them to ask you those questions. You cannot be a racist and answer those questions by saying that you would rather have the white person. Or let's just say you can't be a racist and say that you would rather have the black people on all 3 questions. And it doesn't matter how many questions there are. If whatever color you are, if you are of the right ideology of freedom and individualism, I don't care who you are. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what religion you are. If we can sit down and have a rational discussion, and we can agree on certain ideologies and foundations of freedom and human dignity, then that's all I care about. And I believe that's all that the vast majority of the Trump supporters care about. But they don't want to talk about that because it's too easy. It's too rational. Until next time, this is Joe with Simple Life Show. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day. Bye.